All right. So welcome to the Heavy Diesel Technology Program Takeover, OTC Live Edition. We're going to watch a brief summary of all the social media takeover footage that we've been showing, and then we are going to dive right into some questions, and then we are going to let the program advisor, Mr. Gary Perttula, just to kind of give an overview of what his program is all about. So let's go ahead and start watching the program takeover, and then we'll get right into it. Perfect. Awesome. That was a really good video. Okay, so Gary, let's go into, first of all, welcome. Do you want to go ahead and just introduce yourself and tell us kind of a little bit about your background and how you got involved in heavy diesel mechanics?
Sure. Been around mechanics all my life. That's what my dad was. He was a heavy diesel mechanic, and all my uncles. And so it was just a natural transition. Didn't have a whole lot of choice actually around his house. And that's where I kind of learned from the School of Hard Knocks. And as it progressed, I had a chance where I could get into a teaching position in Phoenix. And then I actually have started training folks in the diesel world since 1988. And then I became master certified and advanced certifications, and pretty much had everything you can get for the ASE certifications. It's over 50 of them. I had them all. Still got most of them. Then did the same thing in the Navy. I was actually a Navy engineman, so which is a fancy name for a diesel mechanic. And I did that for 24 years, 26 years with my old company. And I started here in December. And now we're starting with bringing up a program from pretty much from square one.
Yeah, I remember when you started, so I'm really excited. I think you've done a great job with growing your program, and I think the students that you get are definitely passionate about the field, so that's really good. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and ask you some questions that were submitted. Would heavy diesel be a good program to take in addition to the CDL program?
Yes, CDL, well, I kind of think the other way. I always think mechanics, we need to have CDLs, because for doing a test drive, to be legal and to go down the road, you have to have at least a Class B, which is driving a truck without the trailer. And if you have to drive a truck with a trailer for whatever reason, you have to have a Class A license. So CDL, that's one of the huge requests I get from employers when I talk to them on the phone and when they come by. Is it a requirement to get a CDL? Well, it's not a requirement in the program, but I just saw a guy today who came out of the program and he's going through the CDL program. Just graduated a few weeks ago, and now he's going through the program. Highly recommended, but everybody only has so much money to spend.
Sure, sure. So if you were to do, would you recommend doing one before the other? If you did both CDL and heavy diesel, which one would you recommend students start with first, or does it matter?
I always recommend heavy diesel. One of the things you have to think of is you have to be able to move the truck on the property of the place you're working at. And so that's not that hard. We actually get with the CDL guys and they show them how they can move it around the property, just a couple of gears, nothing going down the road. But if you need to go for a test drive, like I said, you have to have a license of some sort. But I always say get the skills first, and then you can work from there. A lot of times the employers will even offer to paid for the CDL program.
Yeah.
They have, they're trustworthy, they show up, they do everything they're supposed to do.
Okay. Hannah Joy, I'll let you ask the next question. She probably wasn't expecting that.
That's okay. Gary, are there state required exams to test out of the program?
No, there isn't. There's certain programs, usually when you get into degrees, that's when, you know, some degree programs, that's when they get, they got a name for it, but I can't remember the name of the test that you can actually get out of it. Especially on the VA, they have some tests that test on certain classes they want out. But I highly recommend you take every class, because you got to get hands-on training. You can't just learn to use some mechanics from a book. You have to touch it, and that's, well, and the students love that part. Today we were doing quite a bit of it, and a little bit on every aspect of the vehicle, because they're in preventive maintenance. So they really get excited. I like it too, because you start seeing them where they progress. Pencil and paper book, that's just not enough to actually know your problem. Just like I had some folks that actually came out of the service in my last class, and told them at the end of the week, nobody in this class is a mechanic. And he kind of took offense to it for a little bit. I said, well, I just watch you how you're using the wrench. And when I ask you to get something, don't get me a box end wrench. You got to have a minimum of a ratchet, and then you got to know how to use the air tools. So they started learning that, and you can start seeing that progression. So it makes it fun for both of us.
For sure. What is the top paying job in the field of heavy diesel mechanics?
Top paying job is always diagnostics, and typically something to do with transport refrigeration. Those are the two top ones, but you know, anybody can do computer diagnostics of the computer of the engine, and the whole, it just about everything. Trucks have just as many computers as cars have. The highest computer ratio I've seen on a car is 175. I've never seen a truck or a bus or anything that has that quite as that many, but you know, you got 15 to 30 on quite a few of those vehicles that are all talking to each other, and that's where it gets a little bit hairy sometimes. You have to use a laptop, and people think that the laptop tells you exactly what's wrong with it, but it gives you clues. It's just like being a doctor. You have to take all these clues and then make a diagnosis, and you're not always right, and you got to be used, and it takes a little bit of experience as well, because it's not always change this part. A lot of times it's a harness, and you have to know how to differentiate between the part in the harness. And when the harness, and you read it, on certain times, it'll actually give you a fake number. And we have some tools that you can put in there to actually find what the, usually high resistance, what's causing that. So that takes a little while. And electronics blow a lot of people's minds, and just the computer interface. What do I do here? That's where the younger people normally excel when they first get to a shop. Because a lot of folks, if you've been doing it for 30 years, it's not common that they're great with the computer, but they're good at anything mechanical on the truck. They can change it, they can just look at it and know what's wrong with it. But when it comes to the computer, and it's, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And they come up there and they just show them a few things. And I've even had it with people who are in the class now, because they're doing part-time work at different places, and they said, you know how to run this? Yeah, I can do that. And so that's the fun part, when they can come back and brag about themselves a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. HJ, I'll let you ask.
Number one.
Okay.
So if a student wanted to complete all of the certificate programs that are under heavy diesel, which would be the best one to start with?
Well, everybody has to start with intro and kind of get the idea of what's going on with tools and everything. 30 years ago when I started doing this, you pretty much had a lot of farm guys, lumberjack sons, people who are around cars, equipment, family members, and now you don't see that as much. In fact, this new class I just had a few weeks ago, never even operated a lawnmower, never changed bicycle tires, stuff like that. So when last week I had a little epiphany when I was on the grinder, and the guy next to me was using the drill press, and I was kind of walking him through it. I said, now take that piece of metal, put it in the vise, we'll show you how to thread it. And he just kept coming back, and I was like, what's going on? And I said, well, you keep going with the drill press. That's the drill press. You got to go to the vise over there. And he's giving me the look, but he doesn't want to say it. I said, this is not smoking. This is not chewing tobacco. V-I-S-E. Let's go over there. I'll show you what it looks like. And it's a clamp. Oh, and So this week, we pretty much stopped everything. Told my foreman, we got to stop everything. We're showing every single tool in the shop, every piece of equipment. So when I ask them for something, I don't get the big blank stare. I was wondering what was caused. Well, why do they keep looking at me like that? So yeah, intro, and then electrical. We usually have to. Most classes have some electrical. It doesn't matter what it is. Brakes. There's electrical because you have analog brakes. You have to know some electrical. So they pretty much start you in there. The state actually has where you work into go into brakes right away. But right now I'm just experimenting a little bit, seeing how it's working. I started with PM because if you can do preventive maintenance, you can get a job today, part-time, making some money while you're going to school. You can change oil, and people need people who can change oil and do some inspections of the vehicle, which is, DOT requirement. You have no choice on that. And so we're trying to work with that. And I'm actually asking a couple things at the state. We're trying to find out, it takes a little while to get it through the system, but some other things on some electives, the way they have it set up. But intro, electrical, PM, brakes, those are my top 4.
Okay. Can heavy diesel translate to things other than semis, like boats, trains, etc.?
Oh, yes. You can fix your stove at the house. You can fix plumbing, electrical at your house. Neighbor calls you up on his air conditioning. You can help him out a little bit. The biggest problem is air conditioning refrigerant isn't the same as what we have in our cars. Everything has a little bit slightly different, so it takes a new machine. And when my neighbor asked me last, says, okay, it's $1,500 machine, and what I'm going to get out of it is $50. I'm not buying the machine, so you're going to have to call somebody. But I know it's a condenser fan. And they go, what? Because I can't hear it. How'd you know that? Well, refrigeration is refrigeration, no matter what it is. And it's the same thing when people ask you, how do you know that car when you were a diesel guy? Well, you got to know both. And in fact, in some of the older equipment that I got to experience with, the gas engine starts the diesel engine because it's such a monster. So you have to know both. So.
And HJ, I think I skipped a question. If you,
sorry.
Generation, anything with mechanical. Also, you got to do fabrication in my class. So when things break, you got to be able to cut it, weld, build something. Especially in Claxton, you just can't get something today. You have to pretty much make it. So if you need it, or you got to wait 2 days. So if we can't wait 2 days, we got to figure out a way to build something. And just like I remember a few months ago, one of the guys needed a metric nut and we didn't have it. I said, well, at the end of the day, we can't run any place. Build one. And he's just looking, what? This is in a place and nobody can see it. It's not a life or death part. You just need to have those 2 pieces of metal tight. So take a piece of metal, drill a hole in it, tap it, put it on the back side, and we'll be good for today. We'll buy a brand new nut next week. I didn't know. It doesn't even have to look like a nut. So just build something. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Got us off the hook. And then you can see how they're all depressed and no way to go. The same guy also had his Jeep, and he came in and gave me a little bit of a challenge. He said, my dad said we can't get our air conditioning going. It hasn't worked in 3 years. You're not passing unless that AC works. I got news for you. And he's probably my top AC guy right now. I can't think of anybody else, because if there was anything on AC, he's had to fix it on that Jeep, all the way up to the switch on the dash. So, I like those challenges myself, and then they can see that I took this thing nobody thought we could fix, and we got it going in the middle of nowhere.
So I know that we have.
I'm just not good at carpentry.
That's fair. That's fair. So I know
mechanic is very universal.
Right. So one of our dual enrollment students was in that video that we showed, but how old do students have to be to take your classes?
Minimum 16 state requirement. I have some of those folks right now. And the oldest student I've ever had was 70 years old. And they said they wanted to learn something, keep learning, because it keeps moving around, things like that, so they just didn't sit home, get all stiff, and fade away. And I like having some older students. My morning class, I have a guy who's around 46, and my evening class, or my second shift class, I have a guy around 37. And it's kind of like talking to grandpa in a way, and it's not quite that old, but they can relate to him. And sometimes he says the exact same words I use, but it's one of their peers instead of me, and then they understand it. So I use that constantly. I need you to explain this to them somehow, because they're not getting it from me. Because I'm intimidated. They come up to me, how did you know that was what the problem was instantly? Okay, when you're getting close to 60, you start understanding this. So right now you're 16. You got a long ways to go. I'll show you step by step. Man, that takes forever. Yeah, I've done that step by step 1,000 times. It's starting to stick.
All right, Gary, so last question. What is the difference between a heavy diesel mechanic and an automotive mechanic?
Everything's big. The tools are big. Some of the torque wrenches are 10 feet long that I've used, but had a light on them. And when you pull on it, to get a 2,000 foot pump, you had to wait for the light came on. The tools are big, the parts are big. You've got to use the equipment to lift the equipment. Other things, trucks, that's basically somebody's home on wheels. And it has to roll tonight. If you told them it's going to go tonight, it has to roll, because those wheels aren't turning, they're not earning. Compared to your car, it's inconvenient, but we can give you a rental car and you can go home tonight. I can't give you a rental truck to take home tonight. I got to fix the one you have. Other things, equipment is always out in the dirt, middle of nowhere, and you got to go out there and fix it. And I need a part. I got to build something. I need a certain tool. You got to figure out a way to take a torch, cut some metal, and make it happen. So where typically automotive is getting fixed in a garage in town, you can be any place. You can be out in the middle of the Gulf working on a diesel engine on a rig. You can oil rig. You can be on train depot. You can be out in a gravel pit. You can be out. I got students who are actually working for loggers, and they're out in the woods all the time. So it's not always in the garage. And in fact, a lot of our stuff, we only have so much space, so we have to do a lot of work outside. So you're inside, outside, you're everywhere.
Okay, awesome. Well, that wraps up all of the questions we have. Did you have anything that we didn't mention or that you wanted to add about your program before we wrap it up?
Anytime you want to visit, come on down. We're 4 days a week. Usually around 8 to 3, I have students there, but we work till 6 o'clock. I have no issue. If students have something that they're working on, that's my #1 priority. I don't mind showing people around, but I will walk away from you if you're there and they need help, because they're paying me it. But I have no issue with people come by and check out what it looks like, talk to the students, get it from the horse's mouth when it comes to that. And that's actually gained me quite a few students where they could talk to people. Instead of hearing what I have to say, they actually hear what the other students have to say. For
sure. And that's the best way to actually figure out exactly what the program is, and to kind of see, the benefit of actually being in the program. You're not just in a classroom, you're actually in a lab, so to speak, and actually being trained on how to use the equipment before you actually get into the field. So
I've had mothers come with the sons, and daughters come by, and then of course the little ones who are around just kind of keeping interesting and stuff. So 10 years old, they can't go in the program yet, but I have to keep recruiting all the time. So I want more people to come in, and sure, come on by. I don't care, veterans, retirees. Come on by and see if it interests you. Remember, you're gonna get dirty, and things are big. So I had one guy come by and he thought we were working on like Volkswagen diesels, and I said, nah, we have some stuff like that, but we're talking heavy diesels. That's the name means big. So
awesome. All right. Well, I know that this is it was a kind of an event for you to get here, so I appreciate you getting here and recording this. This is going to be something that we're going to use for sure. For anybody that's interested in heavy diesel, they'll be able to reference this video. So thank you so much for being a part of it. And if anybody actually does want to schedule a time to go see the heavy diesel program, you can always email either Gary, or you can email info@ogeecheetech.edu, and we will set up a time for us to meet out there on your campus and take a look. So thank you, Gary, for coming by. And
thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.